I'm Nina Hyatt. I'm a volunteer with HopeWest, and I'm reading today from Chicken Soup for the Soul, Age is Just a Number. The first story was written by Maureen Shubo-Rubin, and the title is How Many Books Can You Read? Oprah Winfrey said, "Passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you." I had just finished my mostly heartfelt thank you speech at my retirement party when my friend Donna approached and asked what I was planning to do with my newfound leisure time. Donna and I were in the same book club and shared a serious love of novels. As I shrugged my shoulders, she asked me two questions that I scoffed at when I first heard them. "What's next for you? After all, how many books can you read?" she wondered. "I can't count that high," I naively replied. "I read everything on the bestseller list. I read my favorite classics. I was knocking off about 3 books a week, but about 6 months into this strange new animal called retirement, I began to grow restless. After all, for the past 50 years, I'd belonged to Workaholics Anonymous, a club for peoples whose lives revolved around the next project, deadline, or great idea. I had been a speechwriter, journalist, and college professor specializing in public relations. Now I really wanted to find something new to do. I never had a hobby. It wasn't that I didn't try. I was just really awful at everything. My knitting was lopsided and unwearable. My attempts at drawing or painting resulted in piles of expensive, unused art supplies. At the end of my first semester of jewelry making, when all my classmates were moving on to intermediate level, my teacher pulled me aside and suggested I might like to repeat the beginner class. I had also tried macrame, hooking rugs, sewing, embroidery, ethnic cooking, piano, guitar, acting, and a laundry list of other subjects best forgotten. So when reading began to give me eye strain and leave me forgetting a book 2 days after I finished it, I panicked. I decided it was time to spread my wings and do some glamorous things I had always wanted to do. Fortunately, I live in Los Angeles, so I began to explore what was available in the world of entertainment. Perhaps I could be an extra. I did some Googling and learned the name of the best extra casting agency in town. I had the required headshots taken at Costco, and off I went to the extra orientation. I learned that my photos would be kept in their files. Each day, I could learn about potential jobs from online postings. Once I saw a job description that fit my profile, I was to telephone the casting agent who would look up my headshot in the file and let me know if I fit the bill. Easy enough, right? Nothing but disappointment greeted me the first few weeks. Almost all the jobs sought Asian bikini models or yoga instructors. I took the plunge and tried for one that sought parents dropping off children at school. That could be me, right? Now a new hurdle arose. I had to actually get my phone call through to the casting agent. I soon learned I wasn't the only person in town applying for that opportunity. I got busy signals for about an hour. I hit redial until I got blisters before I finally got someone on the line. She asked my name and looked me up. In under 5 seconds, she was back on the phone. "No thanks," she said, and hung up. No explanation. I guess my gray hair, which I erroneously thought could look blonde under certain lights, was a dead giveaway that I was no longer credible as parent dropping off children at school. The day after my initial rejection, I saw an ad for All Types for a new sitcom called Mom. It was searching for extras to play diners at an upscale restaurant where the star was a waitress. I could do that. I was an all type. I went to restaurants. I knew how to properly hold a knife and fork. I dialed for an hour and reached the casting agent. After she looked me up, she told me to report to the studio the following day at 7 a.m. with 3 cocktail type dresses. Wow, I had passed. I would receive free parking plus minimum wage. When I got there, I noticed that everyone else in the extra pool seemed to be unemployed actors hoping to be discovered. They were slashers, meaning they were a waitress, actor, or an Uber driver, actress, and so on. I was the only person in the room not looking for stardom. I just wanted to find something interesting and fun to do. I soon learned it wasn't fun at all. It was boring. After sitting in the bleachers all morning, we finally broke for lunch. I spent more money in the commissary than I would make all day. Finally, about 3 p.m., they called my name, and I took my 3 dresses to the costume department. They selected a dress, told me to put it on, and then sent me to hair and makeup. When I was all gorgeous, they sat me up at a pretend bar with my back to the audience and told me to silently pretend to drink and chat with the bartender. I did this for another few hours and was finally dismissed. A few months later, my husband and I watched My Back on CBS. I knew it was me because I recognized the dress. So much for my career as an extra. Still anxious to be part of the glitz, I decided to try to be a temp in an office related to show business. I figured after a few weeks of secretarial work, my bosses would recognize my brilliance and promise me a position of authority. I went to the employment agency, sure that my 50 years of professional experience would impress the pants off any interviewer. But first, just as a formality, I had to take a secretarial test. I did not pass. I was fine with the typing portion, but when they asked me to do a mail merge, they might as well have begun asking me to run the New York Marathon. I realized I didn't know how to be a secretary. I'd had a secretary for my entire career. Another idea down the drain. My last attempt at finding something cool and fun to do was to become a secret shopper, someone who poses as a customer while secretly evaluating the quality of service provided by the store's employees. I thought at least I could get some delicious free meals at fancy restaurants. Unfortunately, my first assignment was to pretend to buy a new car. I went to the assigned lot, asked the required questions, and found myself waiting outside for half an hour in the 110-degree summer heat for the salesman to get some paperwork that I would never complete. Another idea shattered. Maybe I shouldn't look for a job, I decided. Maybe I could volunteer. I went to my local library and offered to read to preschoolers. They wanted a commitment that I would be there every week so I wouldn't disappoint the kids. My grandchildren live 3,000 miles away and I like to visit them. When I told them my travel plans, they rejected me. I also tried working at a few nonprofits. All of them were delighted to meet me and promptly assigned me to the fundraising department, where I was to dial numbers, read a speech, and ask for money. I hate those people when they call me. I did not want to become one of them. Then Providence struck. One of my friends invited me to a play at a local community theater where her sister-in-law worked. I went and was introduced to the director. When she learned that I was a retired journalist, she asked me if I would like to volunteer and start a public relations program, as they had never been able to afford one. I told her I didn't really want to do that anymore. I wanted to do something different. Could I work backstage or even try playwriting? She said, sure, as long as you do our PR too. I agreed. Soon I fell in love with the people, the place, and even the scope of my work. I'm learning to write plays, and 2 of my short pieces were actually produced. It's not Hollywood, and I won't help someone win an Emmy, but I found a way to link what I am good at with what interests me. I think that's the secret of retirement, that and always having a good book close at hand. And I have a very short one before we break for music. It's called Forgetting, and it's written by Lisa Lawson. Does anyone else put things in a safe place and forget then where the safe place is? This is by an author unknown. Yesterday, I went to the basement and just stood there. Was I there for laundry? No. Extra paper towels? No. I thought I could reconstruct what sent me down to the basement, so I backtracked through my thoughts. I came up with nothing. But I wasn't about to go back upstairs empty-handed, so I grabbed a pair of pliers from my husband's workbench. When I got to the kitchen, he was there eating lunch. What are you doing with the pliers? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I thought for a moment about making up a story about how he had promised to fix the whatchamacallit months ago, but forgot. And so I had to do it myself. But why compound memory loss with lying? I went to the basement to get something, forgot what I went to get, so I grabbed your pliers. Here's what I wish I could say. We laughed, split an egg salad sandwich, and continued in our domestic bliss. But that's not what happened. He looked alarmed. Granted, his face looked the same as when he was feeling pity, surprise, anger, or any other emotion. That's why he has no lines on his face. It has never been used. But these are the kinds of digressions that got me into this mess in the first place. He said, we only have one working memory between us, yours, and now you can't remember. I told my friend Linda that I was starting to worry about these senior moments. She's a decade older. Experience matters in these matters, she said. Oh, that's normal. I've heard experts explain the difference between normal memory loss and dementia. Normal is when you leave the grocery store and can't remember where you parked your car, but you remember after a moment. Dementia is when you leave the grocery store and don't know where you are or how you got there. I think that's what she said, and I was reassured. What is it called when you decide that it doesn't matter anyway? After all, I have enough groceries for a week, and I'm pretty sure some of them are in the basement. Okay, our next story is called A Ladder to Light, and it was written by Alice Clise. And the quote and the beginning is from Maya Angelou. When we give cheerfully and accept gratefully, everyone is blessed. I had just turned 65 and I yearned for a new purpose in life. Then one Sunday, our youth pastor at church approached me. Hey, did you ever think about volunteering with the youth department? The high school group needs help. Really? Don't you have a bunch of parents willing to help? Not really. I'd love to have a few mature volunteers who can do some mentoring. Think about it. I went home to convince my husband this was something we should do together. Just think, sweetheart, this could be fun, even keep us young. I chuckled, remembering the youth pastor's comment about needing a mature person. My husband peered over the top of his glasses. He gave me one of those, "You've got to be kidding" looks, but I knew I'd win in the long run. So together, we started to meet with a Sunday school group youth Bible class and also the youth events on Sunday evenings. It was a time filled with silly games, raucous music, fellowship, and scripture study. Little did I know how much this generation gap, this look at the life of teens today, would change me. When I took on the challenge of mentoring teenagers, some of whom lived in difficult home situations, I'd never expected I'd learn something from them. I didn't expect to feel joy and excitement while I watched them walk across a graduation stage. I didn't believe I could stay up on New Year's Eve until 2 a.m. and rejoice to teen exuberance. I watched teens learn to care about the homeless, the needy, and the blind, and I realized they willingly took part in making a difference in someone else's life. I trailed behind teens who walked or jogged for a cancer care or right to life events. When our youth pastor asked if I'd like to be a leader at the annual summer camp trip, I jumped at the chance. By this time, I felt fully accepted as the oldest youth leader. As I started to pack my blood pressure medicine, Tylenol, and extra long Bermuda shorts, I laughed out loud and questioned whether I'd lost my mind to take a week-long trip to the mountains with 50 teens. I reached to massage my aching hip as I took the first step up into the waiting bus, which was already filled with shouting, overzealous teens. One of the boys put out his hand. "Here, Mrs. K, let me help you. I saved a seat for you in the front. It will be easier for you to get out." I didn't know whether I wanted to hit him or hug him. His big smile softened my heart. I just said, "Thank you." I walked to my seat, looked around, and sighed. Every student held an iPad, iPhone, or tablet. They typed away frantically. I glanced down at my bag. My tattered crossword puzzle book peeked out from a side pocket. Did I remember to bring my pencil sharpener? I felt my shoulders slump before I chuckled. 10 hours later, we arrived at our destination. I found myself gasping for breath as I trudged up a long hill to the girls' dorm. Must be the altitude, I guessed. I hoped I had prepared myself for the drama that almost always plagues teen girls at camp. I soothed tears. I prayed for and with girls about their hopes and dreams, fears and choices. I provided the listening ear and an arm around a shoulder. I became their cheerleader when they needed it. The next morning after worship, the youth had free time and they eagerly signed up for the zip line over a deep canyon. I had no idea my role as supporter could take a twist, that I might be the one who needed a listening ear, an arm around the shoulder, and a battery of cheerleaders. I watched with fascination as one by one, our teens ascended a mountainside to zip line across the canyon. I didn't share with them how terrified I am of heights. One of the camp leaders geared up the last teen and then announced, any of you leaders who want to zip can gear up after this last one goes. One teen boy ran towards me. Come on, Mrs. K, it's your turn. No, thanks. It's not my cup of tea. I don't exactly like heights. Ah, come on, Mrs. K, you can do this. Anything is possible with God. Then he laughed and gave me a wink. Don't pull that God thing on me. I'm certain God doesn't want me to zip line. Another leader stepped by my side and nudged my shoulder. I'll go with you. They zip two at a time. I'll be right there with you, right along with God. Then she winked at me. Somehow I found myself geared up, and we started the ascent to the tower. Even with encouragement, I needed to stop many times to catch my breath and try not to cry. A 30-foot ladder loomed in front of me. 4 steps up, my legs wobbled. 10 steps more, and bile collected in the back of my throat. Voices from above chanted, "You're almost here, we'll help you." 3 young men stood at the top of the platform with their hands stretched toward me. Once I planted my feet on the platform, I said, I can't do this. The clip snapped onto the zip line and Julie hollered, 1, 2, 3, let her rip. Suddenly, I flew through the air. The leader yelled, look at you, Alice, you're flying. You've got this. She held her hand out with a thumbs up gesture. I opened my eyes and heard my own screaming voice. I looked up and suddenly a peace settled over me. I waved to the leader and began to sob. I scanned the incredible beauty of God's creation. I felt a tug before I dangled above the world and waited to be helped down on yet another tall ladder. The gallery of teens I had mentored and cared for offered their support and cheers for me. I volunteered to be a light in the lives of a teen youth group, but the truth is, I walked away 7 years later with the best deal from the relationship. Volunteering brought new meaning to this old gal. Okay, our last short story. Sorry about my voice. I think it's all this smoke. It's called Birthday Balloon, and it was written by Phyllis Nordstrom. And John Wayne said, courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. We're going where? It was more of an exclamation than a question. We're going to do what? Now that was a real question because I wasn't sure I had heard right. And so my daughter repeated it. We're taking you to Colorado to celebrate your 80th birthday. And we're all going on a hot air balloon ride. I almost started hyperventilating. My thoughts were spinning. It took a moment to let it sink in. A hot air balloon ride? Mom, don't you want to go? I remember you wanting to go on your 50th birthday, and I want to help you fulfill your bucket list. Honey, 80 is a long way from 50. You're not afraid, are you? I didn't want to admit it, but that was the reason I hadn't gone decades ago. She continued excitedly. We've got a lodge reserved for your birthday week in July. Now I was backed in a corner. Who's the we? It's going to be all girls. Me, your 3 daughters-in-law, and your 6 granddaughters. I've contacted each of them and they're all in. My mind was whirling. My 3 daughter-in-laws? One was local, one in Tennessee, and another in Hawaii. And my granddaughters? They were scattered even further in Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Illinois, and far away Australia. Did you say all? Yes, all. The tickets were purchased, the flights were scheduled, the lodge was booked. To allay any fears, she sent me a link to watch a reporter taking her first ride with the company. So I watched as they checked the wind, explained how the balloon was prepared, and finally, her experience on the liftoff. I can do this, I thought. It was time to start making my to-do list. Pray, manicure, pedicure, lose weight, pray. And that concludes today's readings. I hope you enjoyed them. And we'll see you next time.